नमस्कार, माझं नाव ज्ञानेश्वर बोडके. एका एकराची अभिनव ज्ञानेश्वरी डॉक्टर चित्रलेखा पुरंदरे आणि विश्वकर्मा पब्लिकेशननी या मंडळीने माझ्यावरती पुस्तक लिहिलं आहे. तर या पुस्तकामध्ये अवघ्या 1 एकरमधून प्रत्येक शेतकरी भारतातला दररोज 1000 ते 2000 रुपये कसे कमवल, त्याचसोबत एक देशी गाई, 1 एकरची शेती, नवरा बायकोनी सकाळी 2 तास आणि संध्याकाळी 2 तास काम करून आपल्या घरात जर दर महिन्याला 50-60 हजार रुपये येत असतील, या सगळ्या गोष्टी अगदी सुरुवातीपासून शेवटपर्यंत सर्व लिहिलेलं आहे. माझी आपणा सगळ्यांना विनंती राहणार आहे की हे पुस्तक आपण सर्वांनी घ्यावं, वाचावं आणि या पद्धतीची शेती जर आपण केली तर भारतात एकही शेतकरी गरीब राहणार नाही असं मला वाटतं. त्यामुळं सेंद्रिय शेतीची यशोगाथा आपण सगळ्यांनी वाचावी, घ्यावी आणि आपणही त्या पद्धतीचं आचरण करावं. आम्ही सगळेजण आपल्याला विक्री व्यवस्थेचीही मदत करू. धन्यवाद.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Studio 2. We are now heading into our session on mental health for suicide prevention with our panel of eminent speakers. Speaker number 1 is Sandy Diaz Andrade. Sandy Diaz Andrade is a psychotherapist and a trustee at Connecting NGO. She is also the founder director at Just Being Center for Mindfulness and Presence. She initiated the Helpline service at Connecting and has been in the field of mental health for the past 20 years. Our second speaker is Liane Sakarawala. Liane Sakarawala joined Connecting Trust in 2014 as a distress helpline volunteer and a suicide survivor support volunteer for over 2 years, and provided non-judgmental, empathetic support for those feeling low, distressed, and/or suicidal. Having gained a 360-degree perspective of Connecting Trust's program, she now leads the organization as CEO. Our third speaker is Nidhi Gandhi. Nidhi Gandhi joined Connecting as a volunteer for the Peer Educators program in 2018. She has a background in psychology and special needs education. The desire to create safe spaces for adolescents to support themselves and their peers encouraged her to join Connecting as a coordinator for the PEP. Subhrata Prakash will be moderating this session. Subhrata Prakash is an officer with the Indian Revenue Services, and at present she is posted as Director Niti Aayog, New Delhi. She is the author of The D Word, A Survivor's Guide to Depression. Her speaking engagements include a talk on mental health and stress in the workplace at UNICEF Bangkok, and she was a guest speaker at World Health Day 2017 event of WHO and Government of Maharashtra. I request Subhrata Prakash ma'am to take this session forward.
Thank you very much. And welcome to all the eminent speakers to the panel today. Now, today in Delhi, where I'm based right now, the weather is kind of cold, windy, rainy, and a little somber, just like the topic that we are going to be discussing today, which is mental health, in particular suicide prevention. But the way I see it, that we fight darkness by shining a light on it, and that is exactly what we are going to attempt to do in our panel today. Now, before I move on to the actual discussion, I would just like to tell the viewers who are watching this panel from wherever you are in the world that we are going to be talking about issues like mental health and suicide prevention. So it is possible that you may find yourself a little distressed, or if you're vulnerable to certain things, you may not be very comfortable with the discussion. So at any point of time, if you feel that you're getting distressed, it is just fine to take a step back, or if you are interested in watching the whole show, you might get someone to watch it with you. And in case your distress reaches a level where you think you need help, I'll just give out the helpline number which the Connecting Trust runs for everyone who has mental health distress, and the number is 9922001122. So please keep this in mind, viewers. Now, let me not waste more time about talking about the weather I am and actually move on to the topic for which we are here today. So, my first question is going to be to Nidhi. And Nidhi, I think right at the beginning of this discussion, it's very important to set the tone by figuring out why are we talking about suicide prevention at all? What is the need to talk about it? And that is, please share your views with us, and also anything about the statistics or anything that you feel that you can share right now.
Thank you very much, Subhadra, for that question. Um, the main point of this whole discussion is being that people do not have a place to talk about mental health. And that is one of the reasons why we need to have this particular discussion. As per the World Health Organization statistics, nearly one person dies by suicide every 40 seconds. And this is on an international scale. If we were to look at it in the Indian context, according to the statistics by the National Crime Records Bureau, which functions under the Union Home Ministry, we average around 381 suicides daily in India. And this is information as of 2019. So these numbers themselves will kind of lay the foundation for why we need to talk about mental health, why we need not run away from this particular topic. And we need to remove the stigma around mental health and emotional well-being.
Okay, thank you for that. And Nidhi, would you also like to bring in some myths that people talk about when we mention the word suicide? That, there are a lot of myths, like certain people feel that, if you just mention the word suicide, it's going to plant the idea in someone's head. What has been your experience? Is that true to some extent or not true at all? What are your views on it?
Again, given the widespread stigma around suicide, the fact is that most people who are contemplating suicide do not know who to speak to. There may not be an adequate support system around them. So rather than encouraging suicidal behavior, talking openly can give the individual other options, or at least the time to rethink his or her decision, thereby preventing a suicide. So opening that flow, opening that space, creating some space for them to talk about it is the fact. And talking about suicide isn't going to, put the idea in their mind.
Very true. My views are very similar to yours, that we need to have these open spaces where people are free to express themselves. And the fact is that you do need to address these important issues. If you don't talk about it, how is anyone going to get information which may help them? And on that note, Liane, I'll just bring you in. And again, continuing with the same theme, what has been your experience with the myths that prevail around suicide and suicide prevention?
So thank you for asking that, Shubrita. An often asked question about suicidal behavior is, what if they're just seeking attention and they won't actually attempt suicide? So rather than attention seeking, if we could recognize it as someone in some form of emotional pain and they are currently reaching out for help or support, that would be great. And suicide is just a means to end this emotional pain. So, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think we have established this particular idea that it's a myth that if you talk about suicide, if you talk openly about suicide, it's going to plant the idea in someone's head. It's more important to let people have a space where they feel empowered enough to express. It's a cry for help. And at this point of time, if I may just add a little of my own experience in the advocacy of mental health and suicide prevention, it is also, uh, people who probably would go to the extent of carrying out an extreme step, they may or may not have mental illness, because that's another thing that has come up a lot of times. It may be a distress which the person is feeling at that point of time, and it's a cry for help that someone would actually may want to kind of end the pain and the suffering that they're going through. So let's provide them the space where they know that it's all right to express whatever they're feeling, and they get help for help with the pain, because that is what basically we someone who's contemplating suicide may be thinking about. So, Liane, again, coming to risk factors, what has been your experience? What are some of the risk factors that can drive someone to uh, take that extreme step?
So when we look at risk factors, we're looking at what issues increase a person's chance of acting on suicidal thoughts. So while warning signs are more immediate, risk factors are often longer term challenges that people face. This could be, one is having a history of mental health issues, two, a family history of substance abuse or psychiatric disorders, three, self harm, which could be cutting or bruising yourself. And while that initially may not start out with an intention of dying by suicide, it could escalate into suicidal behavior over a period of time. Four would be prior suicide attempts. So, as I mentioned earlier, uh, a person who is feeling suicidal just wants to end their emotional pain. Now, if you have attempted suicide and the next day you wake up and that emotional pain is still there, that increases your risk of, dying or attempting suicide again. And the last would be having an easy access to the means of dying by suicide. So this could be pills or it could be blades. But essentially, if you're already in a bad headspace and you do have access to these objects, that increases your risk.
Those are really, really important factors. And I hope the viewers who are watching this show and they're listening in would keep these in mind, that these are some risk factors. And that also is a myth that, someone who has attempted once may not attempt again. Chances are that someone has attempted once is more vulnerable to, attempt it another time. And also this whole thing about substance abuse, it's especially in our society, it's a very, very big risk factor. So excellent points that you put forth for our viewers, Liane, because these things we really need to take very seriously. So at this point of discussion, let me bring Sandy in. Sandy has not spoken yet. So Sandy, I will just come again to you with the same thing, that, okay, there are the risk factors and there are some warning signs. So what are the, what are the differences, and what would you say are the warning signs for suicide?
Okay. Um, so when we are looking at, when we are looking at the experience of somebody who is having suicidal thoughts or engaging in suicidal behaviors, like we have already shared, the first thing is to also see that, like you said, Shubrata, that it is a cry for help, right? And it's like something is so overwhelming here, and I don't know how to cope with this. I don't have our current resources that may have been working in the past, but they are not equivalent to facing this situation or facing this crisis right now. And so increasingly, the person starts to think of, which is a normal coping mechanism of mind, actually, of moving away from the situation. Like we often have thoughts, if I could only get out of here, if I can, maybe I just shift out of the city. These are all normal coping mechanisms. You increase that a little bit more, where a person is saying, maybe I just end it all. And what a relief that would be. But actually, when we really talk to people who are feeling suicidal, it's not like they want to end their life. Like Liane pointed out, it's more they want to end the pain. So they also want, we all want people to understand this pain. uh, it's like nobody, often people don't talk about it because it's like who can come in to really understand how it is for me, because you do not get those responses. And so we try to communicate. We try to communicate in the best way possible. So let us look at how we try to communicate. Most people, when you are faced with such distress that you feel like there is no way out, okay, and you feel like I can't talk about this, directly to someone. And yet, we communicate. So let's look at the behavioral signs. And these are what we are looking at as the warning signs. So if you see this in your friend and your family member, know that it is a cry for help. At least it is a reason to investigate. So what are these behavioral changes then? Um, we look at the behavior first, and then we look at the internal expressions of this pain. So behaviorally, what might change? Look at any shift that happens from your regular behavior. Let's say I'm usually okay. I'm quite social, and I'm involved with things, and suddenly there is this lack of interest in things. I don't feel like doing anything. I cut off from my friends. So there is a sleep patterns. There's a sleep and eating patterns. Um, and these are the behavioral outward signs. It can also be the other way around. I am actually feeling quite sad most of the time, and most people feel that I am usually down, and suddenly I'm very chirpy and I'm very upbeat about things. Even this shift. So, any drastic shift in behavior is something that we need to look out for. The other thing is, and even if we see it in ourselves, like what's going on for me, that maybe this is something that I need to look into, or maybe I need help with. The so the other behavioral signs are maybe I give away my prized possessions. Something that was very dear to me. I say, okay, you can have it. I'm giving you everything. I'm distributing everything. I'm saying my goodbyes in various ways. And so this coupled with several other things can be like a warning sign. Like it needs to make us think, why is this person doing this? What's going on for you? Very simple question. Is everything all right? Right? So at the behavioral level, these are the signs. Any drastic shift in behavior, mood, eating, sleeping patterns, giving away prized possessions, um, saying goodbyes in various forms, and at an emotional level, how might it seem? You know, uh, maybe the person says, I'm feeling, um, I just feel like going away. I just feel like ending it all. I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to continue anymore. And what we talk about as the internal experience, which are marked by three important factors: a feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness. Okay, so and how would these come across in speech or in writing? Am I writing about things which are more of a morbid nature, around death, about dying, about seeking help? Am I expressing a low self worth? Like, who would want to talk to me? I don't think anyone would think it is worth listening to me. Look out for things like this, where it's coming in the speech, it's coming in what is being said, what is being written, what is being expressed. So, signs of an internal sense of worthlessness, hopelessness, like I don't see any point of going on. There is no point of moving forward. I don't have an option. And these are repeatedly said, even in humor sometimes, So sometimes it's not said with that mood because we don't feel like people will really take it seriously, or we may have attempted to say it and nobody has, but yet there is a desire to convey something is amiss. So we may just say it in a humorous way, you know, and often it is just treated as humor. But even if somebody is saying this in humor, one needs to wonder, why is this person saying this in this humorous way? What is going on? So to stop there and to engage in conversation with the person in terms of, what's going on for you? Would you like to talk about it? Would you like to say something about it? This is the way we can kind of come in and intervene when we see these warning signs. Uh, and even at the behavioral level, we can stop and we can say, I've noticed that that you're not quite yourself these days. Is everything okay? Right? So, yeah.
So thank you for that. And those are very important points. Viewers, whoever is listening in, just please keep this in mind that if there is any sudden shift in mood, behavior, any aspect of a person's regular routine, please do keep your mind out, and if they are giving away possessions, all of this, everything that Sandy said, these are very, very important points. Because if you can, just ask someone, how are you doing today? That might actually save someone's life. They might end up talking to you about it. And Liane, I'll just bring you in again for a little a bit. That would you like to add to what Sandy just said about the difference between warnings and the myths, risk factors? Yeah.
So I think Sandy already very articulately, broke it down into several things. And maybe one thing I could add is, she already mentioned, what a person could be saying. She mentioned what a person could be doing. Maybe we could look at what's going on in their lives currently. So are they experiencing relationship issues or financial issues? Are they experiencing academic or career related issues, and finally, have they experienced any sort of loss? So this doesn't mean loss in like a person dying necessarily. That in itself is a major
Yes.
loss, but we also could consider other forms of loss, such as as Sandy already like mentioned, I think relocation, but something like even loss of status. I've been working, let's say, for 30 years, and I've suddenly like I've had to give up my job, and now that adaptation is very difficult. So just to be aware of, as she mentioned earlier, what are they saying, what are they doing, and what's going on in their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Liane. So, Sandy, now I come back to you. Usually, I have seen in my own experience with the advocacy of mental health that when we talk about suicide, people have kind of, extreme attitudes towards suicide. Like a lot of people in society, they blame the victim, like, okay, this person was weak and this person decided to end their life. They could not face life. So that again is a myth that, obviously, it's not a weak or strong person. It's just a person in too much of distress and pain. So we also as a society, I believe, need to change our outlook towards, a person who has attempted or has successfully completed a suicide attempt. I'm sorry for using the word successfully. Maybe it's not very appropriate, but for lack of a better term, that's what I'm saying right now. Or somebody who is having suicidal thoughts. But then again, you have people who are very sympathetic, empathetic even, and they want to help, but they really do not know how to help, and they would rather, step back than do something which would aggravate the situation.
Yeah.
So, Sandy, if you can share with us some of the things that a lay person can do to help someone that they see is contemplating of ending it all.
Yeah. So, um, so one of the, like you rightly said, Shubrata, that we might be afraid to approach this topic, right? Like we don't want to approach, which is why also people suffer in isolation. We don't want to approach something that feels, like it's sad, or there's grief, or there's likely, I say, there's loss, and we don't want to approach that. We rather keep it all,
Yeah.
at a very happy level. That's what we are programmed to do. But actually, especially for people, like you said, who can be sensitive, like they sense something is going on over here. To, I would say, not to be afraid of approaching this directly. Like we were looking at the myths, that asking about suicide or asking whether, you're having suicidal thoughts doesn't plant the idea. In fact, it's almost for someone who's having these thoughts, it's almost like a relief, like someone asked and I can
Very
talk about it, right? So, as a layperson, I would say that not to be afraid of approaching what seems, like we started off with, say, that seems dark and cloudy. We can open the door to that, but also to know that we can't do it by ourselves, because whatever the person is going through might be quite a bit and may have a whole range of factors which may not be within our scope to take care of it by ourselves. So we open the door, we create this opening for people to talk, to really listen from our heart space, attentively, and then to also see what is the network of support for this person. Who are the people that they can reach out to, and also can they have support from a mental health professional, which can be quite timely, for them to receive that additional support. So when we are looking at suicide prevention, when somebody is feeling depressed, feeling down, feeling a sense of isolation in their emotional distress and therefore feeling suicidal, we are looking at how not just we take it on ourselves, but how can this network of support be there for this person along with ourselves. So we may offer to be there, to listen, like just asking how you're doing, what's going on for you, would you like to talk about it, I'm here, and then to be there and simply to listen with a non-judgmental view, not to get into fixing, not to get into solving this all these emotions that the person is going through. That's such a gift that we actually do not receive, you know. And if we did have that, just a space that there's someone there with whom I can just say how it is for me, and for that, we don't need to be a mental health professional to do that. Okay? To listen with that sense of empathy, to listen with that sense of respect, to listen with that sense of non judgment, and without, it doesn't require you to say too much. So the key aspect here is to be receptive and listen and not come in with what the person should do, should not do. There is time for that, but maybe the person just needs to express what is it that is going on for them emotionally.
Very right. Thank you. Because I think the whole network of family and friends is also very important when we're dealing with this. And at this stage, I just like to share my own experience for just a while. That I have survived depression. In fact, I've been very open about it. I've even written a book about my experiences. And during that severe phase, I also used to have these thoughts that there's no point in my living. I was living with so much of emotional pain. And in my case, fortunately, my family was very supportive, and my husband was like, a little rock, not, I mean, it's a big rock for me. I used to just anchor myself, and he really helped me get over those bumps whenever I used to feel very, very low, and thinking of maybe life is not worth it. Whenever I got thoughts like that, so from my own experience, I absolutely endorse everything, because yes, we do need that support. That comes in from various. It can be your family, friends. Some trusted person definitely needs to be there. You can anchor yourself to. So now, continuing with the same thing, Sandy, are there any protective factors that can actually help a person, get over these thoughts, or what are your thoughts on the protective factors that play a role in
Yeah.
someone's life?
Yeah. So what we know from the research that what helps is like definitely whatever we saw as the risk factors, access to means, right? So if somebody is feeling suicidal, then we remove those access to means. So when we don't have such direct access to means, because sometimes it's although these thoughts are happening for a long time, that moment of acting on it can be in that moment that I choose to take that step. And if we remove the means, that can be a protective factor because that buys time, right? And we
Yeah.
know that things shift. We know that we don't feel exactly the same. Not that we feel just opposite, but we don't
Yeah,
feel
yeah, very true.
exactly the same after a day or two. Uh, it may cycle, it may repeat, but we also know that it passes. So to trust this, that this emotion, this feeling is here, and it also kind of shifts. So if I do not have access to those means, then I am allowing that possibility that that things can shift. I can look at this situation a little differently. I can get help to cope with it. And I can see that there is help. Sometimes when we are down, we can't see that also very clearly that there is help. It just seems very, very clouded, right? Um, the other protective factor is also what has been found is when there is easy access to mental health facilities. So, like for example, the helpline that connecting is like one place. And like that, there are many helplines across the world and in India where you can reach out and talk to somebody, and you're assured that this is a non-judgmental safe space for me to share just what I'm going through and let that moment of despair or distress pass. So that's another protective factor, to have this easy access, that I can just access it. Like, let's say I don't have anyone around, I can just access this. um, Another important factor that is there is also a sense of connection. So very often when we speak to somebody who's feeling suicidal, and also like you mentioned from your own experience, is that there's a sense of connection with someone. Now that can be family, that can be a friend, and it doesn't always have to be in human form. Okay, I can have a sense of connection to maybe nature, where I feel I can come into my resourced self just for a bit. I can I may feel a sense of connection, to a higher power, maybe. I can feel a sense of connection to a pet. I can feel a sense of connection through my work. I can feel a sense of connection through maybe through art or through expressing myself in some way. So, one of the protective factors is this felt sense of connection. Okay, because if we look at the experience of suicide, it is also an experience of isolation, an isolation in our feeling of pain. Okay, so so to add something where we can feel a sense of connection. And we start small. It's not like we have to go and talk to someone where we don't feel a sense of trust, but to find those spaces of trust and to build more spaces of trust, right? And safety. And even if it is not, like I said, in human form, because that's sometimes harder to trust, because that's where the hurt has been. Um, and we can choose to have that sense of connection, maybe with, like I said, with nature, a pet, it doesn't matter, just a felt sense. And that's what's important.
Thank you very much. And actually, I had wanted to get Liane in on that, but I think we've lost her for
She's
she's having
Liane is
trouble,
back.
she says. So,
Liane,
Nidhi, would you like to, before we go on to the
I'm
question
here.
and answers, would you like to add something to the discussion? And also, I also thought, when we go around, can you also share your experience a little about the recent past, these past few months when, the pandemic has been raging and people have been saying that, distress at all levels has been going up a bit. So would you like to share something about your experience there?
okay, thank you for that, Shubrata. I will start this answer, and I do invite Liane to fill in her points as well.
There.
Liane is back with us, yes. Um, so, apart from the availability of a support system and the sense of connection, another protective factor is also our survival instincts, right?
Yeah.
Liane, would you like to add to that, please?
Uh, okay. Thank you for bringing me in. Am I audible? Because I think
Yes,
there were
Yes,
slight
yes, yes,
issues
absolutely
earlier.
fine.
clearly audible and clearly visible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hello. I'm so sorry. I
Yes,
can hear a slight echo.
you're fine here.
Okay. Okay. So we have experienced certain calls where, people have attempted and have called us in the midst of that. And there is that basic will to live. So there is that survival instinct that does kick in that moment. So I think that is what Nidhi was referring to. And Sandy, if I've said anything, you can always feel free to jump in on this as well. Okay, great. And Yeah, I think so. Sandy very mentioned every like protective factor very clearly. I could hear everything. In terms of interventions, I also wanted to mention one specific thing. So she really nicely mentioned, how you need to reach out and ask. A lot of people say that, these warning signs are very broad. How do I know it's actually like, the person's feeling suicidal. So she very nicely mentioned ask whether they are feeling that way. Two is listen. Three is encourage that support. And the last two things I wanted to mention is that if the person is feeling very suicidal in that moment, you can just try being available for them. So that means that in that moment, you know, you can't be available for someone 24/7, but just to be available until the distress dissipates and to ensure that that person is in a safe space. So she mentioned just, in the protective factors, not having that access to means. That is also a very big deal in that moment. And lastly is to check in on them. This distress, will still be there after a certain period of time. So just to check in and see how they are doing a couple of days later.
So that's something that's really important, that we do need to keep checking in from time to time, because at some point of time a crisis may have got averted, but then how is your person doing? How are they doing? Maybe a month down, 2 months down, 6 months down, a year down. So if you know someone close to you who is vulnerable, it is a good idea to keep checking on them from time to time, because as we have all discussed earlier, that these feelings are kind of they tend to make you isolate yourself, and you just by yourself you feel that you're not, nobody is available for you, you are not available for anyone, and that feeling keeps growing on you. So you need to really have that in check. That's why it is important to keep checking on people, your person, if they have any issues which is still bothering them. And if you can also, Liane, would you like to share a couple of experiences recently? Because, as I mentioned, with the pandemic, a little distress with the anxiety levels going up. So, have you received any spike or anything in the calls, or any specific thing that you would like to share on this?
Shubhrata, I'm going to just reiterate this so that so that I've heard clearly. Uh, I love how the internet decides to act up at just the right moment. Um, just from my understanding, you were asking me any details about the calls, the kind of calls we have received during the lockdown. Is that
Not really the details. No personal details. It's more like your experience. How has it been? That's all. I think we've lost you there. So no issues with that. I think we've lost Liane there. So just I think we have another few minutes before we go into the Q&A. So if there's anything that you would like to add, Sandy, would you like to say something at this stage?
Yeah, I think it is true across Subrata, that with the COVID situation in the last, ever since March, there has been an increase in the level of anxiety, distress, mental health issues that people have been facing. People are coming to, and also many have actively sought help. And we also see that at connecting in various forms. And I think connecting has, we, um, and maybe Liane and Nidhi can say more about that, of how
I'd like to
they've
add here. Yeah.
responded,
Yeah.
how they've responded to this. Yeah.
So, because of the pandemic, many people have been at home. And although our helpline service is available, it may not have been possible for them to make a phone call. So, Connecting also has a distress mail service. So, people can send in an email um, explaining their distress and seeking support. So, in response to your question, we have seen a spike in the emails, because Connecting
Okay.
does maintain confidentiality, but because the person at home does not have that privacy or that space to make that phone call, this is where the email service has come in really, really handy.
Okay. So that's a great thing to know, because at least you have some way of connecting, because
Absolutely.
and your name itself is connecting, which is all about connections with people, and people in distress who can reach out. So anything, I'll just go one by one, maybe just a minute each if you would like to just add something, starting with Liane, Sandy, Nidhi, however you would, just a minute each.
Okay.
Anything that we would like to add specifically related to, I mean, I'm so sorry if you could,
Yes.
Okay.
any points that we may have missed, or
No. I was just asking if you want to
In
add
general.
something to, in general, anything that during the course of discussion that you would have.
I'll start
just
with
just
that
from
for
my,
you.
oh,
Okay.
sure,
Okay. Take a moment. Yeah.
sure.
All right. So this is in regard to what a layperson can do. Um, I'm going to take this from my personal experience, being someone who did not have any background in this and then coming into Connecting as a volunteer. There is this urge to save, and the urge to solve the other person's problem. Now, what happens is when somebody is in distress, when we go with that energy of, I can do this for you, I can do that for you, and let's fix this. That can be quite unnerving, and it can put the person off, and they may not feel like opening up. So, checking your intention over here, is it about your need to feel like you are doing something for the other person, or can you really be there for the other person? Because suicidal ideation is a very deep topic, and it can be heavy. And we go in there with this need to save this other person, but then if they do choose to open up to you and they trust you, and then you find this Pandora's box and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with it, I do not know how to deal with this. That is when one needs to be honest with what support you can provide. And there is no harm done in ever feeling or thinking or saying that, okay, this is out of my league, let's bring in some other support. And it's perfectly all right to accept that the other person is not going to think any less of you, and it's not going to do any damage if you yourself also need to seek out and search for support. That is what I would like to add in terms of protection.
Very true. So when it comes to suicide prevention, we must remember that first, do no harm, just like it is with all aspects of health and life. First, do no harm. So if at any point of time you are concerned about a loved one and you've seen the signs, you've explained very well what are the signs to watch out for. But if you feel that as a layperson, as you cannot provide support beyond a point, it's something that it's out of your league. So then you just do need to bring in the professionals, or whatever is the next steps that you need to take. You need to take. So there's no harm. There's no harm in saying that, okay, I am not able to handle this. So that would be another good pointer for everyone who's watching our show. So we have another 15 minutes to go, and I believe there were some questions which had come in. Studio, can we?
Yes, the
Okay,
first one is
so
on the screen.
here's the first question that's come in from Sonia Prabhu, and it says, "Can we say that not just talking to a person, but believing his version is important to get a person out of depression?" Uh, uh, who Probably
Yeah.
Sandy, you would like to answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Um, uh, when we listen, with empathy, it's not always that we are in agreement with the other person's experience. So, and that's where actually we can encounter a lot of difficulty. So, we don't have to be in agreement with the other person and how they are looking at the situation or what is it that they are looking at. But what we are connecting with is the feeling. And that is a common human experience, right? We are connecting to this that even if we don't need to know about the situation, whether it is true, whether it is not true, but for this person, it is like this. And if I am in that situation, I may look at it differently, which is fine. But for this person, it is like this. So, in that sense, I would go with what is being said that, it is about believing the person, but it's more in terms of going with it is your experience, and I can respect how it is for you. And this is how you feel, and this is how you see the situation, which can be different from how I see it. So, empathy does not mean agreement with the other person, but it means a connection that I can see. I can step into your shoes and I can see how it is for you. How does it look like from your point of view? So that's what we take on when we are listening to someone. If I
That,
got that question.
Sandy, thank you so much for saying that. That's something that that really needed to be said. That empathy doesn't mean that you completely agree with the person, but the fact that okay, you understand what the other person's journey is all about, what being in that person's shoes means. So thank you very much for saying this, especially for all the people who have mental health issues and who are stigmatized, and society does not understand what you're going through. So that was absolutely, thank you very much for saying that. And is there another question that, okay, so now I just come to the next question. The question is from Renu Arya, and she asks, what is the name of the book you just mentioned you've written, Shubhrita? Okay, that's a question for me. So the name of the book is The D Word, A Survivor's Guide to Depression. And this was published by Pan Macmillan in 2016. It's a kind of old book, it's 4 years old. And I wrote it when I was very, very severely depressed. I just was in the midst of a very severe existential crisis, in fact, so to say. So that book is about giving part of the book gives information about depression, and part of the book is about my own journey through all those years of it. So I hope that suffices. And next question, please. Okay, that's from Rahul. And the question is, do you think that hallucinogens and psychoactive substances can be used to help cure depression? Okay, Sandy, would you like to take this?
Yeah. So I don't know in terms of curing depression or curing anything. If I understand it right, it would be in terms of creating or having an altered state of mind. Now, we do know that psychotherapy helps. We do know that medication helps. We do know that sometimes there are biochemical factors involved, not always, but sometimes they are involved, and that might require medical intervention where it is involved in terms of shifting one state of mind, then one can shift one state of mind through other practices as well, which may not cause harm and of course, that has to be done with guidance. Whether we are talking about there is a lot of talk in terms of mindfulness practices, meditative practices that can help us not to change our state of mind, but to really see what is it that is going on for us. So sometimes the best way to change our state of mind is to really um, move through that state Okay. So if they are feeling sad, sometimes it feels like, yes, I need to not feel sad. But sometimes the way out is to go in there, to talk about the sadness, to have the sadness, and to have it received by somebody else. And that can be very healing. So to allow for whatever there is space, that is what we have been talking about.
Okay, and
Rather
I'd
than,
also just like to
yeah.
add to that, that the substances most likely being referred to are ketamine and psilocybin, which have been found effective in research. But I would just like to put out a warning there that anyone who's watching this show, please do not take any of these very strong mind-altering substances all by yourself. Let your if you're seeing a psychiatrist or a doctor, let them take all decisions about the substances, the drugs or the medication that you take. Please do not take any of this by yourself. They are very powerful and they can have really really bad effects if you take them by yourself. So I just wanted to qualify that there. So is there another question that's there? Okay, this question is by Amita. And the question is, request you to please share the helpline numbers here and pin it so more people will have access to the same. Absolutely, this is very important. Like, Nidhi, would you like to take this, or Liane? Like, could you share your details again? Yeah, you're on.
So, would you like me to repeat our helpline numbers?
Yeah,
Given
please do,
that
please
I
do.
will not be able
Yeah,
to
absolutely. How?
type it
Yeah,
in.
no problem. Please, at least if you can
Okay,
share it orally, and then maybe the festival
sure,
can
sure.
put it out, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we have two numbers that people can call. The first is 9922004305, and the second number is 9922001122. Now, this is available on all days from 12 to 8 p.m. So we don't take any holidays, and you can, if you feel, as Nidhi mentioned, that calling is not an option, you can write to us and email us at stressmailsconnecting@gmail.com. So hopefully that was clear.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And I would just request someone in the studio if you can just put it out there for everyone to see and to reach out if they are feeling distressed, not just right now, but at any point of time. This is one source of help, one resource that's available to you. So we just have another 5 minutes to go, and I would just like to ask if there are any studio, are there any other questions or um, I think we are done with the questions. So, just like the last 5 minutes, we're just going to wind up. So, 1 minute each of any last words that you would say. I would just like go from Nidhi, Liane, and Sandy. Let's just go that way.
Okay. I'm sorry, but Liane, I invite you this time to please start this.
Okay.
Okay. So, any last words?
No,
With
that
me,
sounded very prophetic. I'm sorry, in a negative way. That's not the way it was meant. I just
I
meant it for the show
not a
today.
problem. Yeah. I I think Nidhi mentioned something that's really important, which is basically how to kind of listen and our intentions that do come across. So our intention to save, or our intention to, I was also thinking of maybe the intention, where we give like really positive advice, and, to see where that is coming from, you'll get better in no time or something. So where is that really coming from? I think it's important for us to just maybe consider, as Nidhi mentioned, what our intention is with slightly, positive advice, and to consider, our intention when we also want to really share a similar experience that we ourselves have gone through when listening. So, just this is just me building up on the intentions thing that Nidhi mentioned. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Since I'm next, before Sandy closes it for us, I'd also like to say that There is also this, I'm going to touch upon a myth which says that if a person is serious about ending their lives, then there is nothing that anybody can do. And it's actually quite the opposite. That those who have suicidal ideation are often ambivalent about, living or dying. And someone may act impulsively, either by consuming something or harming themselves, or do it over a period of time, even though they would have liked to, live on. So thus it is important to gain access to emotional support at the right time. That is what I'd like to add to this conversation.
Okay. Sandy, quick
And
1 minute.
yeah, and something that I would just like to add on is also care for the caregiver. It's like sometimes we are with people, and I know many of us have friends, family members who have been going through maybe suicidal feelings, ideation, and like has been said, sometimes the caregiver, the supporter, needs support, needs the listening. So, at any point of time, to also seek that support for oneself. And that doesn't mean that one is not being of help. Like Nidhi said, also to see how much I can kind of take on here, how much is okay, and to include ourselves in this mental health framework. That while we are there for others, we are also there for ourselves,
Okay.
and to find balance.
So with that, we come to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Sandy, Liane, and Nidhi, for being here and for talking to us. And not just for today's session, but I also want to thank you for the work that you do, because it is really something which is required. And may your tribes grow. That's the only thing I can say, because we need more of you. And thank you, PILF, for having this session, because mental health gets the short end of the stick always. Thank you for actually bringing the focus on something as important as this. So with that, it's back to the studio.
Discussion and discourse regarding mental health is the need of the hour. Thank you so much for shedding light on this subject and enlightening us with your valuable insights. At 3:15 p.m., join us for our exciting next session on the rise of the genre, thrillers, mystery, and others.